So list syntax. First things to note. I'll just do list equals, we do square brackets for list. Okay, for a tuple, we do a round bracket. Or whatever a round one is called. So if you use the wrong one, you're not going to get a list. We're going to come back to tuples a little bit more because we're going to use them in the homework assignment. But lists have indexes. They start with 0. And that would be 1. So we can get to the individual things. We can say A equals list sub 1. And we would expect to see that A is equal to this value right here, 2. We have all sorts of operations on lists. We can do list dot append, okay, and that'll take a 5 and stick it into the list. So this implies that our list is now going to be equal to basically 1, 2, 5, right there at that point. So we have things that we can do to lists, and there's a bunch of different operators. Okay, the operators are mostly covered in chapter 3, and we're looking at some stuff out of chapter 4, but we look at a bunch of operators. Then we get to something like list comprehensions, where we say, okay, we took a look at a list, and what happens when you do sort on that list. And that puts the list in order. This is already a sorted list, but we could have a list and we could sort it. There are reasons why we want to have sorted lists. We're going to get to that, especially in the homework. So we've got operations that append, sort, remove things from list. Remember, we have delete, and it's not a function, it's delete list. And we actually tell it the range that we want to delete. So from 1 to 2, that we can take stuff out. And if we want to delete the entire end of the list, we could do, in these same square brackets, we could just do 1 colon. And no extra value. That says go from there all the way to the end of the list. So we've got ways to add things, change things in a list. We can do list sub 0 equals 8. And change the values inside a list. Those are the basic list operators, and then we got to something called list comprehensions. I for I in our list L, and we can have out here a criteria if I is less than 4. And that'll give me a new list down here. S will be equal to 1, 2, 3. Now, I want to cover what's in the list comprehension, because we've got several different pieces in the list comprehension. And let's take a look at what those pieces are. First of all, we've got over here an expression. And we saw some expressions like I star star 2 to square it, or I times 2, but some calculation out there. Then we've got this, which is a declaration of what variable we're going to be using in the list. Okay, the variable. Then we've got what the list is, and we saw some examples of both a list and using a range. And then out here we've got this last piece, which is an expression of truth. Okay? This expression out here says, if this condition is true, then do this. So there's a bunch of different pieces that we can substitute in. And then there are the pieces that you kind of have to have in your list comprehension, like the for. Okay, that's a reserved word, and the in. So it knows that this is a list comprehension. Between the square brackets, the for, and the in, that's how the language says, oh, what they mean here is I want a list comprehension. And you get to pick these pieces. Now, when you pick these pieces, okay, there's some things that you should think about. The variable is unique to the list comprehension. It isn't going to be seen anywhere outside the list comprehension. You don't have to pick I, you could pick small, you could pick Tim. What the list is that you're taking data from, right? And what conditions you want to apply to it. And that's a lot of stuff in one line. List comprehensions are powerful. Okay, we're going to move on to using lists, and that's really stuff out of chapter 4, but we're going to be building up to actually taking lists and manipulating them and using them, both sorting and searching lists.